Welcome back. This is the ISIT governance course. This is module 4, change management. The idea behind change management is that you have made the IT investment, the new application has been developed, and now you want the users to use the system. So the idea behind change management is for the company to derive the value it expects from the new system, the users have to use the new system. So change management is about making sure that the users use the new system. In this module, we have two goals: change management basics and different change management strategies for different types of systems. In this lesson, we will focus on change management basics. In this lesson, we have three goals: understanding user resistance, different models of user adoption, and different levers for affecting user adoption. This video will focus on understanding user resistance. So what is user resistance? User resistance is the means by which employees communicate their discomfort with a system. If a system threatens users in any way, they will resist. By threat, we mean any loss of status, loss of power, loss of revenue is a threat. If a system threatens users, they will resist. So better theories on resistance will lead us to implement better strategies. If we understand why users are resisting, we will be able to implement better strategies. So let's start by looking at the level of resistance. Resistance can take one of these forms. Apathy means inaction or lack of interest. Users don't show any interest in using the new system. Passive resistance means they delay using the new system, they make excuses for not using the new system, and they continue with their former behavior. That is, they continue to act as if the old system is in place. Active resistance is when they voice opposing points of view, ask others to not use the new systems, and form coalitions of people who resist using the new system. Aggressive resistance is when users make threats against people who are proposing to use the new system and people who are interested in using the new system. Boycott, sabotage of the new system are all manifestations of aggressive resistance. So the question is, why do users resist using a new system? So we can examine this question from the status quo bias perspective. So the idea is there is already a system in place, so the users make a rational decision that the new system does not favor them. So they assess the costs and benefits of the new system, and they may see that there is a cost associated with the new system. They have to learn the new system. There is some uncertainty and risk associated with the new system. For example, the new system may make them feel incompetent. So rationally thinking, they prefer the old system to the new system, so they resist using the new system. So rational decision making leads to resisting using the new system. The second reason could be cognitive misperception. So even small losses may seem like a big deal. So even small flaws in the new system may seem like big hurdles to using the new system. So cognitive misperception may lead users to resist the new system. And finally, psychological commitment to the old system may lead users to resist the new system. So for example, all the effort invested in learning the old system may seem like a waste, which will cause users to resist using the new system. Similarly, the effort required to feel in control of the new system may seem like excess amount of effort, which may cause users to resist using the new system. So rational decision making, psychological commitment, and cognitive misperception may lead to resisting the new system. So how do users cope with a new system? So we can look at a coping model of user adoption. Users choose different strategies of coping based on the assessment of consequences of a new system. Is a new system an opportunity to improve their performance, or is a new system a threat to their position in the organization? The second dimension is a user's assessment of control over the situation. That is, how much control do they feel they have over their work, over themselves, and over the technology. So based on their assessment of the consequences of the new system and their assessment of the control over their situation, they may choose different strategies. So let's look at these strategies, coping strategies, one by one. So benefit maximizing strategy is when the users feel that the system presents an opportunity to improve their performance and they have high control. That is, they have control over how they will perform their work, they have control over the technology. So in this case, users may modify the technology or modify their behavior, that is gain training, so that they can maximize the benefits of the system. That is, they use the system to maximize their performance. The second strategy is benefits satisficing. So this is a situation where users feel that the new system presents an opportunity to improve their performance. However, they don't have any control over how they will perform their work, and they don't have any control over the technology. So in the benefits satisficing approach, users' goal is to do the best they can, realizing that they don't have any control over their work, themselves, or over the technology, but they believe that the system can help them improve their performance. So they try to use the system to maximize their performance. The next strategy is what is referred to as disturbance handling, where the users see the system as a threat to their position, but they feel that they have control over their work, themselves, and the technology. So disturbance handling means users doing everything that is in their control, such as gaining training, modifying the system to minimize the threat of, for example, getting fired. The last strategy is referred to as self-preservation, which means that the users feel that the new system is a threat to their position, but they don't have any control. So self-preservation is like hoping that this new system will pass and nothing will change. So self-preservation is about hope and self-deception to cope with the situation where the new system is a threat, but they don't have any control over the situation. Thank you. Welcome back. In this lesson, we set ourselves 3 goals: understanding user resistance, different models of user adoption, different levers for affecting user adoption. This video will focus on different models of user adoption. There are 2 models of user adoption. The first model is referred to as the demand-driven model of user adoption. The basic idea behind this model is if the benefits are higher than costs of adoption, then users adopt. The second model is referred to as the supply-driven model. Here the assumption is users want to adopt the new system, but they face knowledge barriers. So removing the knowledge barriers helps to adopt the innovation. So let's start with the demand-driven model of user adoption. This model has 4 dimensions. The first dimension is performance expectancy, that is degree to which the individual believes that using the system will help him or her attain gains in job performance. So if the new system will improve their performance, they are more likely to adopt the system. The second dimension is effort expectancy, that is the degree of ease associated with the use of the system. If the system is easy to use, they are more likely to use the system. The third dimension is social influence, degree to which an individual perceives that important others believe that he or she should use the system. So this dimension is about the social pressure to adopt the new system. So who else is using it? How many other people are using it? If a lot of other people who the user considers as important are using the system, then the user is more likely to use the system. Finally, facilitating condition. So the user asks this question: if I have difficulty using the system, can I get help? So this dimension is about the degree to which an individual believes that organizational and technical infrastructure exists to support the use of the system. So if the conditions support the use of the system, then a user is more likely to use the system. So in the demand-driven model, often referred to as the user acceptance model, users look at 4 conditions: performance expectancy, effort expectancy, social influence, and facilitating conditions to decide if they will adopt the new system. Now let's look at the supply-driven model of adoption. So this model of adoption is about knowledge barriers. Resistance to innovation is due to knowledge barriers. In this model, the assumption is users don't adopt if they face knowledge barriers. So to reduce resistance to the adoption of innovation, we need institutions to lower the knowledge barriers. As knowledge barriers are lowered, diffusion speeds up, adoption speeds up. So thus adoption is conceptualized in terms of organizational learning, skill development, and knowledge barriers. So if you develop skill and knowledge and capabilities to overcome the knowledge barriers, then adoption takes place. This model is nicely illustrated by a study by Ruby et al., who examined the implementation of enterprise systems. So enterprise systems, to implement enterprise systems, firms have to overcome 2 knowledge barriers. Knowledge barriers associated with the assimilation of new work processes, and knowledge barriers associated with the configuration of the ERP package. This study found that user training that included technical and business process training helped firms overcome assimilation knowledge barriers, and a strong core team that included high-performing technical and business managers and carefully managed consulting teams addressed configuration knowledge barriers. So user training that can overcome assimilation knowledge barriers, and a core team and consulting teams that can address configuration knowledge barriers can help firms implement enterprise systems. Thank you. Welcome back. In this lesson, we set ourselves 3 goals: understand user resistance, different models of user adoption, and different levers for affecting user adoption. This video will focus on different levers for affecting user adoption. So the different levers we will focus on in this video are user involvement, training, peer support, top management support, and use of external consultants. So let's start with user involvement. So the role of user involvement and participation. So the main idea is that if users are involved in the development of the information system, they take ownership of the system. They believe that they were involved in the development of the system. It is their system. In that case, they are more likely to adopt the system. So user participation affects attitudinal and behavioral outcomes such as satisfaction, use intention, and system use. Also, if users are involved in the development of the system that gets developed is closer to what the users want. So you develop a higher quality system that actually meets the user's requirements. So user participation affects productivity outcomes such as time and budget goals, and project quality such as functionality that meets user requirements. So if users are involved in the development of the system that is developed includes features that users want and does not include features that users have no intention of using. So in that sense, user involvement leads to system that is developed on time and budget and functionality that users actually want to use. Academic research has found that user participation has stronger impact on attitudinal and behavioral outcomes than productivity outcomes. That is, user involvement is more likely to be associated with the users actually using the system than being associated with productivity outcomes like on time and on budget. The next lever we will focus on is training. Training helps with application knowledge covering commands and tools in the application. Training also includes business knowledge about how the application enables the performance of different business tasks. That is, how the application allows the task to be performed differently. Training also helps with collaboration. That is, users understand how they use the system affects others, and how others use the system affects how they do their work. Typically, experts explain the application to novices in a classroom setting, demonstrating how to use the system, observing the learners practicing using the system, and they provide feedback to the users. The relationship between training and information systems implementation varies with technical complexity and task interdependence. Under conditions of high technical complexity, training becomes more important. Technical complexity affects both application and business knowledge that users need to use the application. Thus, as technical complexity increases, training becomes more important. For example, for low complexity innovations, users face limited knowledge barriers. That is, for low complexity innovations, users don't actually need formal training to use the system. They can use the system on their own. That is, training is more important for technologically complex systems. Training is also more important when the system helps with interdependent tasks. So, when users need to understand how their work affects the work of others and how the work of others affects their work, then training becomes more important. So, training is more important when the system helps with tasks that are interdependent. Next, we are going to look at peer support. An individual's co-workers can be an important source of help in overcoming knowledge barriers. It is easier to transfer knowledge between people with similar training, background, and job characteristics. So, academic research has found that peer support is very important in helping with adoption of new information systems. People learn through self-discovery and through peers. So, that is, having co-workers who are knowledgeable about the information system is very helpful in influencing an employee to use the system. So, if an employee's co-workers use the system, then the employee is more likely to use the system, because it is easier for an employee to learn from a co-worker than to learn from training. So, this peer support can include any user outside of formal training. So, peer support can include lead users, resident experts, informal consultants, any co-worker from which an employee can learn about the system. Peers can be more helpful than help desk, as help desk may be understaffed and help desk may lack the domain knowledge to resolve user problems. So, academic research has found that peer support is a very important lever in influencing the adoption of new systems. Next, we will look at top management support and commitment. Top management support and commitment is essential in information systems implementation, as information system implementation is very resource intensive. So, top management is responsible for allocating scarce material and managerial resources. Top management support also legitimizes new information systems and convinces users to expend effort to learn to use the new systems. So, this top management support and commitment is communicated through active championship and through organizational communication. Academic research has also found that top management support is more important if task interdependence is higher. If the value from the system depends on lots of users performing interdependent tasks using the system, then top management support is more important. Finally, we look at external consultants who may influence the adoption of new systems. So, here I would like to go back and refer to the study I discussed earlier, where Robbie et al. Looked at the implementation of enterprise systems. In the implementation of enterprise systems, firms have to overcome knowledge barriers associated with configuration of the ERP package. Here, carefully managed consulting teams addressed configuration knowledge barriers. So, consultants or external vendors who may provide clients with capabilities that the client lacks is a very important lever in influencing the implementation of information systems. Thank you. Welcome back. This is the IS IT governance course, and we are in module 4. This module is called change management. In this module, we set ourselves 2 goals: understand the basics of change management, and then discuss the different strategies that may be used to implement different types of systems. This lesson will focus on different strategies for implementing different types of systems. So, in the previous lesson, we discussed critical success factors for implementing information systems. Critical success factors included top management support, communication and employee involvement, project champion, involving the best people full time, training and change management support, and finally adequate use of external consultants. So we discuss these as critical success factors in the implementation of a new system. In this lesson, we will focus on the different levels of importance these factors have for implementing different types of systems. So in this lesson, we will discuss how implementing evolutionary change differs from implementing revolutionary change, and how treating an information systems implementation as a project differs from having a learning approach to implementing information systems. So this video will focus on the difference between implementing evolutionary versus revolutionary change. So evolutionary change is a change that complies with the current values, norms, skills, structures, and incentive systems. So in evolutionary change, we want to implement a new system, but the new system is very consistent with the current ways of doing things. However, revolutionary change is a change that challenges the status quo and accomplishes fundamental change in the values, norms, work practices, and structures. So in some sense, revolutionary change is a system where we are trying to use the systems to radically change how the company does things. So the question here is, should an evolutionary change system that presumably makes incremental changes in how things done differs from a radical change, that is a new system that transforms how the company performs its activities? So let's look at how evolutionary change differs from revolutionary change. Evolutionary change is motivated by self-improvement. We want to implement evolutionary change when things are going well, but we want to improve things. In contrast, revolutionary change is motivated by impending crisis or failure. That is, you have a system that is failing. You have a company that is in a dire situation, and you want to implement a new system to radically change things. So a revolutionary system is motivated by impending crisis or failure. The leadership and management of the change process in the evolutionary system is provided by insiders, that is, managers who have made the company successful so far provide leadership for evolutionary change. Things are going well, and they will lead an effort to improve things. However, in revolutionary change, the idea is the current leadership has failed. They cannot radically transform the system. You need to bring outsiders, a new management team, to implement a radically different way of performing the company's activities. Employee involvement. In the evolutionary approach, for employee involvement, we use current managers and representative employees. So things are going fairly well, so we use current managers and representative employees to implement evolutionary change. However, in the revolutionary change, we only involve the best of the breed and employees dissatisfied with the status quo. So to implement radical change, we only involve the best of the breed employees and employees dissatisfied with the status quo to radically change the system. Next, we will look at communication. So in the evolutionary approach, we have broadly communicated plans. That is, we involve everybody and convince them about why this new system is being implemented. Whereas in the revolutionary change, we start with the key stakeholders. We don't try to convince everybody about the new system. We start with the key stakeholders and use them to communicate why this new system is being implemented. Structural change. In the evolutionary change, the new system is adapted to the capabilities of the existing employees. Change is a recursive adaptive process. So in the evolutionary change, the system is adapted to the employees, and the employees adapt to the new system. So in that sense, change is recursive adaptive. However, in the revolutionary change approach, we need to change the root structure of the firm. So we qualify employees who will fit the new order. That is, in the revolutionary change approach, we select who will be the employees who will fit the new order. The rest will be let go. So in some sense, the revolutionary change is a take it or leave it approach, because we will select who are the employees who will fit the new order. The implementation approach also differs between evolutionary and revolutionary change. In the evolutionary change, we take a phased incremental approach to implement the new system, because we have things that are going fairly well, so we want to mitigate the risk in implementing the new system. However, the idea in the revolutionary approach is that this is going to be a very painful change. So why prolong the pain? That is why we're going to implement a revolutionary change using a big bang implementation approach. That is, on one fine day, we will switch from the old system to the new system. Finally, milestones. In the evolutionary change, milestones are flexible. We will set milestones, but we will be flexible because we want to mitigate the risk. However, in the revolutionary change, we know this is going to be a painful exercise. So we will come up with the date, and on that date, come what may, we will switch from the old system to the new system. Thank you. Welcome back. In this lesson, we set ourselves two goals: how implementing evolutionary change differs from implementing revolutionary change, and how treating a new system implementation as a project differs from taking a learning approach to implementing new systems. In this video, we'll focus on the difference between treating an information systems implementation as a project differ from taking a learning approach to implementing a new system. So what is a project? A project is a complex, non-routine, one-time effort constrained by time, budget, and performance specifications that is designed to meet customer needs, resulting in a unique and well-defined product, service, or result. So we can treat implementing a new information system as a project and manage the implementation as we would manage a project. A different way of implementing information systems is to take the learning approach. The learning approach means that the organization is continuously striving to learn and implement better ways of performing its activities. So in the learning approach, implementing a new system is part of what the organization does. That is, it is continuously striving to learn and implement better ways of performing its activities. So a new information system is not a one-time project. It is how the organization lives, and it is always continuously trying to do things like this. So we will look at how a project management approach to implementing systems differs from the learning approach to implementing new systems. So what is the role of leadership and how does it differ between the project management approach and the learning approach? In the project management approach, the role of leadership is to define clear scope, provide resources, and communicate clear purpose, reason, and consequences of the new system. So in the project management approach, leadership provides resources and communicates clear purpose. That is, it explains why the company is implementing this new system. However, in the learning approach, the role of leadership is to create an environment where the company is developing new capabilities and sharing knowledge. So in the learning approach, the organization thinks of itself as it is in this continuous learning mode where they are developing new capabilities and knowledge is being shared. Next, we look at change management. So how is change management handled in the project management approach? In the project management approach, the idea is the new system is a technical interruption in the life of the business that can be project managed out of the business. That is, the new system implementation is a project with a clearly defined scope and milestones and with a beginning and an end. So the change management approach in the project management approach is that the new system implementation is a technical interruption in the life of the business, and we will treat it as if it is a one-time project and manage it with a clearly defined scope with a beginning and end and milestones in the middle. However, in the learning approach, we approach change management in this way. The implementation is an endless learning process with many small projects. So we are continuously trying to implement better ways of doing things. In this approach, users learn from actual use, not from training, as new functionality are added. So over time, users will implement the system by actually using the system. Over time, new activities will be added. That is, the new system will encompass more activities. The activities will be integrated, and over time, the system will be adapted. That is, functionality will be changed and reconfigured. So in the learning approach, the idea is that users will implement the system by actually using the system. Over time, they will use the system for more activities. The activities will be integrated, and over time, the system will be modified. Next, we look at how power users or super users are treated. In the project management approach, consultants train power users or super users. Power users or super users train regular users and then go back to their previous jobs once the system is implemented. So in the project management approach, consultants or experts train power users and super users. Then power users and super users train regular users and then go back to their previous jobs once the system is implemented. However, in the learning approach, knowledge is acquired from actual use and knowledge is transformed from one user to other users through their social networks. So in the learning approach, the focus is on mastering the system and diffusing knowledge to other users. So in the learning approach, users learn with use and then they share this knowledge with other users. Finally, in the project management approach, success is due to excellent planning and execution. So in the project management approach, success is due to excellent planning and execution. However, in the learning approach, success, that is mastering of the system, is due to osmosis, growth and adaptation. That is, users learn with use. Over time, they perform more activities using the new system. The different activities are integrated, and then the system is adapted. That is, new functionality is added, the system is modified as the users find new and better ways of doing things. Thank you. Welcome back. This is the IS IT governance course. In this lesson, we will summarize the key ideas from module 4, change management. The main idea is an organization invests in IT. However, for the organization to derive value from the investment, users have to use the system. If the users don't use the system, the organization does not derive any value from the new system. So in this module, we discuss ideas about how to make sure that the users use the new system. So the key idea is, if users are threatened by a new system, they will resist. If we understand how and why resistance happens, we will be able to implement better strategies to make sure that users adopt the new system. So why do users resist a new system? It may be purely rational decision making. The users may assess that the costs of learning the new system do not make it worthwhile to adopt the new system. So resistance may be a rational decision on the part of the users. The users may also overinterpret or overestimate the cost of learning the new system. So cognitive misperception about the new system will cause users to resist adopting the new system. Finally, psychological commitment to the old system. So all the time and effort invested to learn to use the old system may discourage users from adopting the new system. So we discussed two models of adoption of a new system. The first model is a demand-driven model. In the demand-driven model, users evaluate the usefulness, that is the benefits of the new system, and compare it to the ease of use, that is the cost of adopting the new system. So if the benefits are greater than the costs, users are more likely to adopt. In the supply-driven model, the main idea is users want to adopt the new system, but they face knowledge barriers. So resistance to adoption is due to knowledge barriers. Any institution that reduces or lowers knowledge barriers helps the adoption of the new system. We discussed a set of levers that managers have to influence the adoption of a new system. We start by looking at user involvement and participation. The idea behind user involvement and participation is that if users are involved in the development of a new system, they take ownership of a new system and are more likely to adopt the new system. We also discussed training. Training can be about application training, about how to use the application. Training can be business context knowledge, that is how the new system allows tasks to be performed. Training can be about collaborative tasks, so how a user's activity affects other users and how other users affect the focal users' tasks and activities. We said that training is more important when the new system is very complex or more complex, and when tasks are interdependent. So training becomes more important when technical complexity is higher and when task dependence, interdependence is higher. We also discussed peer support. The idea is it is easier for employees to learn from coworkers. That is, it is easier to transfer knowledge between people with similar training and background. So coworkers have a significant influence in the adoption of a new system. We also discussed top management support and commitment. Information systems implementations are resource intensive. So top management demonstrates its commitment to a new system by allocating resources and by legitimizing innovations through communication and championship. Top management support is more important if task interdependence is higher. We also discussed external sources of knowledge. So it is very likely that an organization lacks the capabilities it needs to affect the adoption of a new system. So in that case, an organization can reduce knowledge barriers by acquiring capabilities from outside. So for example, the adoption of an ERP system can be influenced by how well the system is configured to the needs of the users. If the organization lacks the capability to configure the ERP to the needs of its users, it can acquire resources from outside that can help the organization configure the ERP package. So external vendors can provide capabilities that can help with the adoption of a new system. We discussed a list of levers managers have access to influence the adoption of a new system. However, different systems may be implemented differently. So for example, an evolutionary system may be implemented differently compared to a revolutionary system. An evolutionary system is a system that is consistent with the values, norms, skill structures, and incentive systems of the company, whereas a revolutionary system is a system that challenges the status quo and is used to fundamentally change the values, norms, work practices, and structures of the current organization. So the main point is, or the argument here is that we may follow different strategy to implement an evolutionary system compared to the strategies followed to implement a revolutionary system. So for example, evolutionary change tactics differ from revolutionary change tactic in terms of need and motivation for the system, leadership and management of the change process, employee involvement, communication, structural change, and the approach to implementation. Finally, how an organization implements a new system will depend on, is the new system implementation treated as a one-time project, or does the organization have a learning approach to implementing information systems where it thinks that the organization is continuously trying to implement new and better ways of performing activities. So any new system is not a one-time project, but this is how the organization lives and breathes. So we discussed how the implementation of a new system differs between a project management approach and a learning approach. The project management and the learning approach differ in terms of role of leadership, the approach to change management, how users learn, that is the role of power users and super users, and what is defined as successful implementation of the new system. Thank you.